Well, welcome once again to ABC24 This Week. I'm Richard Ransom along with ABC24 political analyst Otis Sanford. We're here to talk about the real story behind the big stories, as we are every Sunday at 9 a.m. and 10:35 p.m. And here is what is on our menu for today. First, the state of education. Memphis-Shelby County Superintendent Dr. Joris Ray giving his State of the District address, which includes a lot of ambitious plans, but are they realistic? The Family Dollar rat infestation, live and dead rats and other filth, leading to the closure of the company's West Memphis warehouse, as well as hundreds of stores that sell food and other necessities around here. What are we learning from this fiasco? Nashville versus Memphis, from the governor's ice storm response to lawmakers telling Memphis how it can hire first responders, the action or inaction raising eyebrows this week. We will get to all of that in a moment, but first, I want to introduce to you my panel. We have Otis Sanford, as I mentioned, ABC24 political analyst. Behind him is Sam Hardiman, commercial appeal reporter, and to his left and behind me is Samantha West. She's a new guest here on ABC24 This Week, a reporter for chalkbeat.org. If you haven't checked out Chalkbeat, it writes about everything education, very informative, so we're glad to have you on. And so, Samantha, I'm going to start with you. This very ambitious budget and Reimagine 901 plan that the superintendent unveiled this week, $2.19 billion, a lot of money. First of all, why don't you run through some of the biggest bullet points as you see it in terms of the impact on students and families?
Well, there's a lot I could talk about, but what I'll start with is Superintendent Joris Ray promised teacher bonuses next school year. It comes in the form of $1,500 for teachers and $500 for teacher assistants. And that's a big deal because this year and in the decade before that, a lot of schools, including Memphis-Shelby County, have struggled to staff classrooms. There are lots of vacancies, and the pandemic has only made that problem worse. So this investment, I believe it'll cost about $11 million to give these boosted pays. I think this is a big deal because Dr. Ray is definitely sending a message to teachers that, you know, he appreciates them and wants to keep them around. So that's a really big deal. I also think it's important to note that Dr. Ray talked a lot about continuing initiatives surrounding early childhood education and literacy. He has for a long time talked about his Literacy is Life initiative and the many partnerships with community organizations and kind of their goals to move the needle for the community's youngest learners. And so it's a big deal that he's continuing that. And it's very important considering the importance of those early years. You know, kindergarten, first and second grades, research tells us time and time again that they are absolutely critical to students' future success. And also, I think important to know, while there isn't a dollar amount attached to this per se, and it might not even happen, Joris Ray also announced that the district may consider a year-round school calendar rather than the traditional 10-month calendar. And that's a big deal because, well, that would change the entire business of education. I mean, instead of having a longer summer break, kids would have a few 4 to 2 week breaks within the school year. And so that's a pretty big deal. He hopes that it would cut down on what's called the summer slide, kind of that academic slide that students experience during the summer. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that.
Well, let me ask you, we want to talk about the year-round concept because he floated that idea at Otis and it was, you know, got a lot of response, and he was afraid people were going to throw apples at him as a result of it. But right. When you talk about the expense, because Shelby County is getting a lot of federal funds this year, and that's why they're seeing this as an opportunity. He's getting some criticism that this is mostly consultant-driven. Will it really do anything? Will any of these plans or programs really move the needle? When you talk to your sources, what are they saying in terms of what are they most excited about that really has the potential to have an impact on the performance of Shelby County kids?
Well, I think that a lot of folks are really excited that he's continuing work on early literacy. I mean, like I said before, studies show again and again that, you know, if a child can't read by second or third grade, you know, that's a really tough hurdle to overcome going forward. And so that's a really big deal. And so seeing what exactly, you know, those partnerships and those continued efforts, seeing what comes out of that will be really interesting. I think teachers are really excited about the bonuses, and while that may not sound academic driven, I mean, if you don't have teachers in schools, you're not going to see the needle move. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And, this has been a really hard 2 years. We're coming up on the second year anniversary of the pandemic, and teachers are stressed and they're tired, and that's something that everyone's talking about, and so and everyone's seeing across the country the effects of. So it'll be interesting to see, if that helps the district.
Well, let me interrupt you because Otis, as well as I do, you've been covering the school system longer than I have. A couple of news organizations couldn't help but point out last year we learned that only 11% of Memphis-Shelby County kids are performing at the grade level, and brought that up in conjunction with the State of the District address this past week.
Right.
Was that fair, do you think? What are your thoughts about just the unveiling and its potential for Shelby County kids?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, obviously, when we take a look at what the schools how the schools are performing every year. And so that should be no different. But you notice, Richard, that the State Department of Education, in this case, gave the school district an H grade, which is basically means we're going to hold you harmless this year. And there's a reason for that. And Samantha just mentioned it. We've been through 2 years of COVID. The school district was in virtual learning pretty much most of that time. And everybody knows that, when you're in virtual learning, you lose a lot of kids. I teach at the college level, and I lost a lot of kids in my class. So that's no different from the grade school level. And that's why it was at 11%. 2 years ago, it was right at 23% who were performing either acceptable or exceeding the expectations. And so the drop has to be attributed to COVID-19. I think overall, obviously Superintendent Ray was being a cheerleader the other day with his State of the District address, but I think he has some grand plans. Samantha mentioned 2 or 3 of them that I think have some promise, and we will just have to wait and see how this turns out.
Let's revisit the topic she brought up earlier about year-round schools. Sam, I'm going to bring you in on this. We have a graphic put together of some of the details of what that generally means, looking at other, particularly urban districts that have adopted year-round schools. And it is basically the same number of school days, 180 school days a year, but you go to school for 6 to 9 weeks in a row, depending on the district. Then you get these 2 to 4 week vacations in between. Proven advantages are that it does seem to slow down, if not stop the summer slide. And there's some evidence, according to a Duke University study anyway, that you do see some improved relationships between students and their fellow students and their teachers. Is this the kind of out-of-the-box thinking that we should be engaging in right now, or do you think should we steal a page from Mayor Strickland and should be focused more on getting back to the basics?
I'm presuming this one is addressed to me, the
Yes.
lesser of the two Sams here. Okay. So I covered public schools in Tulsa before I came to Memphis, and this was something that was often talked about there in terms of the summer slide, in terms of even breaks, Thanksgiving break, if you have a week, or Christmas break, winter break. There was definite learning loss, and kids weren't retaining information, and they were going back sometimes into environments that weren't necessarily the best for them. And that was also something teachers were then encountering when they came back to school in terms of behavior and re-socialization and stuff like that. So I think that this is something that definitely has the potential to help kids retain information, stay in school, and those relationships with teachers are huge. If you're going to keep more teachers with bonuses, and then they're going to have longer, more productive relationships with their students, that is probably a really good thing for students in Memphis-Shelby County schools.
All right, just finishing up with you, Samantha. What are next steps for this idea of a year-round school? What needs to happen for it to really seriously be considered?
Well, it's still a pretty new idea. Asked by reporters, Superintendent Joris Ray was telling us, I don't have a timeline for this. There's a lot more research that needs to be done. And he also mentioned that he needs to speak to teachers because obviously their buy-in will be very important. And he mentioned that, expanding to year-round school might require long-term raises for teachers. So there's a lot that will happen, and we'll just kind of have to see.
Okay, and we'll be watching it.